Leaders in Canada and Mexico are committed to close coordination before next year's review of the trade agreement. Let's talk to William Pellerin on this, partner at McMillan. Thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure being here.
The Prime Minister and Sheinbaum have signed that sidebar agreement now. Any idea of what could be included under that?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, this is not a trade deal by any stretch of the imagination, but it is an agreement to collaborate on security and defense and things relating to drug and drug trafficking, which are issues that the United States has taken offense with both our countries, actually. So a lot there, gearing up for the CUSMA renegotiation, but also looking at some trade diversification with respect to growth in infrastructure, ports, rail, and the like.
What kind of diversification? What could Canada send more of, for example, to Mexico?
Well, that's a really good question, because that Canadian exports to Mexico have languished quite a bit over the years. It's a very small market for our exports. We actually import quite a bit more from Mexico than we do, of course, export. In terms of specific products, difficult to say. I think generally speaking, we're really talking about how we can grow in terms of support for port infrastructure, mining, and general collaboration on the services side, more so than on sending additional goods.
Generally speaking, the focus for Canadian officials during any sort of trade discussion will be in trying to get sector tariffs dropped from the U.S. Can you see in any way, shape, or form Washington agreeing to that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really important that Mexico and Canada collaborate here, because of course we face legally the exact same tariff structure, right? So we both have these baseline fentanyl tariffs applied against our own, each country. There's additionally the sectoral tariffs with respect to auto and steel and aluminum and the like. And both Canada and Mexico are big steel producers, and particularly important is the automotive supply chain there. So I think it's very important that we work together precisely to deal with the United States together, where unity makes strength, as these negotiations with the United States ramp up over the coming weeks and months.
William, what do you think the U.S. will be focused on trying to get from Canada during a CUSMA negotiation?
That's a really good question. So we're seeing that the United States formally opened its consultation process. We know generally that they're going to go after a number of sectors, including dairy, including automotive, rules of origin. Beyond that, it'll be really interesting to see where they go, and we don't really have much insight beyond, the Truth Social posts from the U.S. president and the administration on, I would say, those two big issues. I think that the bigger question is, do they try to lump in a broader security and defense framework into those renegotiations, or do they keep that separate?
So Ottawa, of course, launching its own set of discussions, trying to get some input from industry and workers ahead of the official negotiations. What do you think our team wants to learn?
So certainly, we have a number of clients that are going to be participating quite actively and making views known in terms of the importance of the relationship, in terms of where Canada ought not to give way. An important issue, for example, last time during what led to the CUSMA and former NAFTA negotiations related to preserving Canadian appeal rights for softwood lumber and other producers under what was at the time Chapter 19 of NAFTA, now Chapter 10 of CUSMA, so the right for certain industries to be able to appeal decisions by U.S. authorities. So there's a number of other pieces there, and I think the government will be very interested to hear whether those things are still as important as they were last time.
Do you think there will be a specific focus on some of the sectors you mentioned, dairy, for example, or lumber, or do you think it's intended to be more widespread?
I think it would be really interesting to see whether softwood lumber in particular can get lumped in and solved through the course of a broader renegotiation of the trade agreement. Historically, that's never been the case. Duties on softwood lumber have always followed separately. I think with respect to dairy, Canada has done relatively well in not granting the U.S. too much access to the Canadian market. And by that, I mean well for the Canadian dairy industry that has maintained strong protections at the border, not allowing things like U.S. milk and cheese products to flow into Canada. In fact, the U.S. has less access to the Canadian market than the EU does in terms of who gets various quota allocations. And so I think there's a lot there that the United States is going to want to reopen also.
Very quickly, how concerned are you about Washington tending to divide and conquer, right? Even though Canada and the U.S. are having a pre-meeting to sort of, I'm sure, talk to each other about how they're going to approach these trade talks, Washington, Donald Trump in particular, seems pretty good at going to each country and sort of putting something on the table that will make it want to step away from the third country. It's a divide and conquer strategy we've seen him use before. How concerned are you about it?
I think it's a really important concern, and precisely why the Prime Minister was in Mexico this week. I think that's a key part of reopening a dialogue with Mexico, aligning, make sure that they're unequivocally aligned to the extent possible. Certainly the case that we're not fully aligned on all issues, but I think it's very important for the parties to keep that strength and unity and not get played off one another in a way that actually ends up hurting us both. So I think bilateral agreements are probably a last resort, and it'll be very important to stick together trilaterally.
William Pellerin is a partner at McMillan LLP. William, thanks for your time.